The scent of wet earth and wild flowers, both familiar and strange, embraced Clara the moment her rented car pulled up in front of her mother's house in Ribeirão das Flores. So many years gone, so many oceans and broken promises, and here she was, back at the same rusted iron gate that seemed to smile with an ancient melancholy. The house, an imposing facade with windows that peered at the street like tired eyes, seemed untouched, a photograph frozen in time, resisting oblivion. Clara, however, carried a hole in her chest, an old wound that never truly healed, the guilt of having left, the bitterness of not looking back. She came from a world of lights and sounds, but her heart held the silence of an unfulfilled promise, the echo of a goodbye that was never said. Her explicit desire was perhaps a late redemption, an attempt to mend the fragments of a past she had naively tried to erase. The door creaked softly at her touch, revealing an interior where the air felt dense, laden with memories and a faint scent of lavender and mold. Everything was in its place: the dusty piano, family portraits with unknown faces, her mother's rocking chair by the window. Untouched, yes, but with a stillness that screamed. Her mother, Donna Hilda, sat in the living room, a mere wisp of a person, small and fragile, her eyes lost on some point on the wall, as if searching for something only she could see. It wasn't just age, Clara felt. It wasn't just time. There was an emptiness there, an absence that transcended the physical. Clara's heart tightened, a knot of anguish and regret rising in her throat. It was loneliness, a loneliness so profound it seemed to have corroded her mother's soul, transforming her into a shadow of her former self. The neighbor, Ilara, a woman with a fixed smile and eyes that lingered too long, appeared at the kitchen door, carrying a tea tray. "Clara, my dear, what a surprise. Donna Hilda will... And you who are with me now, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments. I want to get to know you a little more." Ilara paused, her smile widening into something almost forced as she placed the tray on a side table. Clara barely noticed the small, dark-covered notebook Ilara dropped, almost on purpose, beside the teacup. A small notebook, one for daily notes, which Ilara picked up with exaggerated quickness, tucking it into her apron pocket. A minor detail, but one that Clara's mind, trained by years of observation, didn't miss. "Donna Hilda will be so happy with your visit," Ilara finished, her eyes sparkling in a way Clara couldn't decipher. "She's been talking about you so much, almost every day," but Donna Hilda said nothing. She didn't move. She just continued with her lost gaze, like a porcelain doll forgotten in a corner. Clara felt a chill down her spine. This wasn't the mother she remembered. The strong woman, with an easy laugh and penetrating gaze, had disappeared. In her place, only a spectre remained, an echo. The neighbor, on the other hand, seemed to overflow with energy and a strange familiarity with the house, with her mother's routine. What was Ilara doing there, after all, with such ease? And why was her mother so distant, so absent from herself? Clara tried to approach, touched Donna Hilda's cold hand. "Mum, it's me, Clara. I'm back." No reaction. Her skin wrinkled, cold. Ilara then gently intervened, almost protectively. "She has days like this, my dear. It's age, you know, and a little longing, but nothing a good tea won't fix." She served a steaming cup of herbal tea with a strong, sweet aroma and offered it to her mother, who, with a slow, mechanical movement, brought the cup to her lips. Clara felt a growing discomfort. Was her mother simply debilitated, or was there something more, something Ilara was hiding or controlling? In the following days, Clara tried to reconnect with Donna Hilda, but it was like trying to hold sand between her fingers. Every attempt was frustrated by a new barrier, often subtly erected by Ilara. The neighbor seemed omnipresent, always nearby, always with a ready explanation. "Donna Hilda doesn't like noise. Donna Hilda needs to rest. Donna Hilda prefers to be alone right now." Ilara's words were always sweet, but the sweetness hid a firmness that prevented Clara from having a moment alone and undisturbed with her mother. It was as if Ilara was the guardian of a secret or the director of a play where Clara was just an unwelcome spectator. Clara began to notice other details. The house, though intact on the surface, had a strange lack of life. The plants on the porch, once exuberant, were wilted, almost dead. The refrigerator, once full of jars and leftovers, now contained only a few basic items and pre-made meal packages. What had happened to the Donna Hilda who loved to cook, who grew her own herbs? The stillness Clara had felt upon arrival was not just longing, but absence. The absence of a life that once thrived there. One afternoon, while Ilara was out running errands, Clara took the opportunity to explore. She went to her mother's bedroom, a sanctuary of memories. There everything seemed in order, but a smell of medicine lingered in the air, stronger than that of lavender and mold. On the dresser, between an old picture frame and a worn rosary, Clara found a small wooden box. She opened it. Inside, there were some old photos, some yellowed letters, and at the bottom a receipt. It wasn't just any receipt. It was from a distant pharmacy for an expensive medication and with a recent date. But the signature on the back wasn't her mother's. It was Ilara's handwriting. Why would Ilara be buying expensive medicines for her mother and signing for her? A knot tightened in Clara's throat. What else was the neighbor doing? What was truly happening there? What else was the neighbor doing? What was truly happening there? The receipt burned in Clara's hands, a piece of paper that unveiled and at the same time concealed. She knew she needed to act cautiously, like a detective treading on eggshells. The pharmacy was far away downtown, which meant Ilara traveled to buy something that apparently Donna Hilda couldn't acquire alone. What kind of medicine was it? Was it for her mother? And why the secrecy? From that day on, Clara's eyes became sharper, her perception finer. Every movement of Ilara, every word spoken was filtered through a new lens of suspicion. The neighbor continued her routine of care, but Clara began to notice the lack of genuine affection, the absence of a loving touch, of a conversation that wasn't unilateral. Ilara spoke to Donna Hilda, but Donna Hilda didn't respond, and the neighbor seemed not to care, continuing monologues about the neighborhood, the church, the household bills. It was a well-rehearsed performance for anyone who wanted to see. Clara tried, discreetly, to approach Ilara about her mother's medication. "Ilara, I noticed Mom takes some medicines. Does she have a specific illness? Have the local doctors been following up?" Ilara hesitated for a split second, her fixed smile tighter than usual. "Oh, my dear, it's just the things that come with age. A weakness here, a little pain there. The town doctor is an angel. He prescribes what's needed and I take care of it. Don't worry. Donna Hilda is in great hands." The words were soft, but Clara felt the barrier rise. Ilara wouldn't give details, wouldn't reveal the doctor's name or the type of medication. It was as if her mother's health was a secret garden, with Ilara as the only gardener. And Clara, the daughter, was outside the wall. Social pressure began to manifest subtly. During Clara's walk through the town square, some neighbors, the same ones who used to greet her with warm smiles, now looked at her with curiosity, whispering in groups. "Donna Hilda's daughter is back after so many years," their glances said. Ilara, with her network of contacts in the neighborhood, seemed to have planted a seed of doubt about Clara's absence, about abandoning her mother. The guilt Clara already carried turned into shame, a heavy burden that Ilara seemed to enjoy parading, even if indirectly. Clara felt increasingly alone. The town that was once her home now seemed strange and hostile. With each passing day, the distance between her and her mother grew, not by Donna Hilda's will, but by Ilara's constant interposition. The neighbor was the bridge and, at the same time, the wall. Clara needed something more concrete, something that couldn't be denied with a forced smile or a well-placed rumor. She needed proof, one that Ilara couldn't hide. If this story of secrets and family ties moves you, or if you've seen something similar, tell me in the comments using the hashtag #HildaSecret. Your voice helps illuminate these truths. One afternoon, while Ilara was in the kitchen, Clara decided to look for something that could explicitly link the neighbor to her mother's finances or health. She knew it was risky, but the desperation to understand what was happening was greater. In the house's office, which once served as Donna Hilda's sewing studio, Clara found a dusty folder of documents. Most were old bills, electricity and water receipts, but among them there was a bank statement, a simple statement from a savings account in Donna Hilda's name. What caught Clara's attention was not the balance, but a series of regular withdrawals of considerable amounts made in recent months. These were cash withdrawals, with no identification of who made them. but the frequency and amount were alarming for someone who, apparently, barely left the house. The dates of the withdrawals coincided with the period when Ilara had taken over care of her mother. Clara looked at the statement, then at the pharmacy receipt, and a picture formed in her mind. It wasn't just Donna Hilda's health that was at stake, but perhaps her assets, her dignity. She felt a chill. What else was Ilara managing or diverting? Her mother's loneliness was not only emotional, but also an isolation that made her vulnerable to financial manipulation. Clara needed answers, and fast. Every day that passed, her mother seemed to drift further away, and Ilara seemed to root herself deeper into her life and home. What was behind so much kindness and control? And how could Clara uncover the truth without destroying what was left of her mother? The bank statement, with its cold, irrefutable numbers, was a punch to Clara's gut. It wasn't just her mother's loneliness, her empty gaze anymore. It was something concrete, something that touched her assets, Donna Hilda's security, regular, hefty withdrawals from an account that should have been untouched, and Ilara's signature on the pharmacy receipt, a link that closed. The neighbor was not just a dedicated caregiver, but a figure with access and control over her mother's financial life and health. The image of Ilara, previously a solicitous woman, began to distort, revealing darker contours. Clara felt her heart tighten, a mix of anger and despair. How could someone take advantage of another's fragility, especially an elderly person? She remembered the notebook Ilara had dropped, that small, discreet object the neighbor picked up so hastily. Could it also be a piece of the puzzle? Clara's mind reeled with questions, each more urgent than the last. She needed more proof, more pieces to put together the complete picture. But how to get them, with Ilara always around, always watching, with her keen eyes and fixed smile? The atmosphere in the house changed. Clara, once an observer, was now a silent investigator. Every conversation with Ilara was a potential trap, every answer from the neighbor, a riddle to be deciphered. Ilara, in turn, seemed to perceive the change in the air. Her eyes lingered longer on Clara, a glint of distrust mixed with her usual sweetness. "Is everything all right, dear?" she would ask, her voice like cotton, yet carrying the strength of steel. "Donna Hilda is getting better, isn't she? Thank God, and the care we've given her." Ilara's care, however, seemed more like a prison than help. Donna Hilda spent most of her time sitting in the armchair, inert, fed by Ilara with slow spoonfuls like a child. Clara's visits were always supervised, conversations superficial and interrupted. "Don't tire your mother, Clara," Ilara would say, with the tone of someone who knew more, who held authority. The daughter felt powerless, drained. The emotional cost of seeing her mother like this and being prevented from getting close was immense. Her old guilt for having left now transformed into an acute pain, a corrosive regret. The small town, which once seemed a refuge, now became a stage for Ilara's manipulation. Gossip in cafes and markets gained strength. The daughter only came back to see what was left of the inheritance, some would comment with sideways glances. After abandoning her mother for so long, now she wants to play the good girl. Ilara, with her daily visits to the bakery and church, expertly sowed these stories, never saying a direct word, but leaving the suggestion, the insinuation, in the air. Clara's reputation, already in question due to her long absence, was now corroded by Ilara's narrative. Clara felt the weight of these judgments. It was as if the whole town was against her, endorsing Ilara's version, the helpful and devoted neighbor. The loneliness her mother felt seemed to spread to her, a loneliness of incomprehension and isolation. She needed an ally, someone who could see beyond appearances, but in Ribeirão das Flores, Ilara's word seemed to carry more weight than that of a daughter who had returned after years. What would you do if you saw your own story being rewritten by someone else, right under your nose? Clara's frustration grew. She tried to contact the doctor Ilara mentioned, but the neighbor always evaded, saying the doctor was traveling or too busy. The excuses were fluid, convincing, but empty. Clara decided to go to the pharmacy on the receipt, the one downtown. She arrived there with her heart pounding, the crumpled receipt in her hand. She asked about the medication, about who had bought it. The attendant, a young and attentive woman, checked the system. The medicine was a strong sedative, prescribed for severe insomnia and anxiety, but with the potential to cause lethargy and mental confusion in the elderly. And the buyer's name? Elara Marcondes, the young woman said. She buys it regularly, always pays in cash and asks not to register it under the patient's name. The ground seemed to disappear beneath Clara's feet. Strong sedative, lethargy, mental confusion, everything fit her mother's condition. It wasn't old age, it wasn't longing. It was the medication. And Elara was buying, controlling, keeping Donna Hilda in a state of near unconsciousness. The information was devastating, but also a terrible relief. It was the missing piece to begin to understand her mother's quietness, her lost gaze. But there was still the mystery of the bank withdrawals. How did the sedative connect with the money? What kind of game was Elara playing? And how could Clara prove all this without the neighbor noticing and getting rid of the evidence? With each step, Elara's web proved more complex and dangerous. Clara felt a knot in her throat. The truth, however harsh, was beginning to unravel, layer by layer. It wasn't just the fragility of age, nor the longing that consumed her. There was a hand behind it, manipulating the strings, keeping Donna Hilda in a state of near lethargy. The strong sedative bought by Elara was the key to her mother's quietness. But what about the withdrawals? How did the medication connect with the money disappearing from her mother's account? This was the piece still missing, a crucial link to unmask the deception. She knew she needed something more, something irrefutable that would link Elara directly to that web of silence and theft. The neighbor, with her sweet smile and watchful eyes, was an artful adversary. Clara tried once again to approach Elara indirectly, mentioning the need to organize her mother's documents, to check the finances. Elara, it would be good to take a look at Mum's accounts to make sure everything is in order, don't you think? Elara, however, was quick, an impenetrable shield. Oh, my dear, don't worry about that now. Donna Hilda was always very organized, and I've taken care of everything with the greatest affection. Let old Elara here take care of these boring things. Your mother needs peace, not worries about papers and numbers. The answer, though gentle, was a wall. Elara would not allow access. The emotional cost of each frustrated attempt weighed on Clara, who felt helplessness corroding her soul, old guilt mixing with a new and overwhelming pain. She was alone, surrounded by a town that seemed to endorse Elara's narrative. The sense of urgency grew. Each day that passed, Donna Hilda seemed more distant, more trapped in her own world of fog. Clara could no longer retreat. She couldn't give up. Her mother, a mere wisp of a person, deserved the truth, deserved justice. This was the point of no return. Clara knew that from that moment on, her mission was to unravel every secret, whatever the cost. She needed to find the proof that linked the sedative to the money, her mother's quietness to Elara's greed. The memory of the small, dark-covered notebook Elara had dropped that very first day came back with force. A detail almost forgotten, but which now seemed like a beacon. Elara picked it up in a hurry, with exaggerated speed. What could be so important there? Could that be the missing piece? Clara waited. She waited for an opportunity, for a moment of distraction from Elara, who seemed to never leave the house. Finally, one afternoon, Elara announced she needed to go downtown to handle some urgent matters at the bank. Clara felt her heart race. This was her chance. As soon as the door closed and the sound of Elara's car faded, Clara began her search. She ransacked the most obvious places. The living room, the kitchen, Elara's bedroom, yes, the neighbor had settled into her mother's house. Nothing. Where would Elara hide something so important, if that notebook even was important? Clara's mind raced to the less obvious corners, to the hiding places only someone very intimate with the house would know. Donna Hilda's old sewing room, now the makeshift office. She had already found the statement there. But the notebook? She rummaged through drawers, looked under rugs, behind books on the shelf, and then there it was, hidden beneath a pile of old fabrics, inside a box of haberdashery, a small, dark-covered notebook, exactly as she remembered. Clara's hands trembled as she opened it. The first pages were trivial notes, shopping lists, neighbors' phone numbers, recipes. But as she flipped through, Elara's handwriting changed, becoming more precise, more organized. And then, the numbers. Her meticulous table, with dates, amounts, and the word withdrawal next to them. These were the withdrawals from Donna Hilda's account, detailed one by one. But that wasn't all. Next to each withdrawal, there was a column with the word doses and times, and the description: Hilda calmer, Hilda cooperative, Hilda no questions. The air seemed to thin in the room. Clara felt a cold chill run down her spine. It wasn't just theft. It was a cruel, systematic manipulation, using the medication itself to keep her mother in a state of submission. The notebook was not just proof of embezzlement. It was a diary of control, a record of the gradual annihilation of Donna Hilda's will. The turn was brutal, undeniable. Ilara was not a caregiver. She was a predator, and her mother, a silent victim. Clara closed the notebook, the weight of the truth crushing her. The smell of lavender and mold in the house, once a perfume of memory, now seemed the odor of captivity. She could no longer hesitate. She could no longer limit herself to observing. She needed help, someone who had the power to intervene, to restore her mother's dignity and to punish Ilara. The town, with its gossip and suspicious glances, would not be an ally. She needed a greater force, an authority that could see the truth behind Ilara's facade of kindness. With the notebook in hand, Clara felt a cold determination take hold of her. She knew the fight would be difficult, but she was no longer alone with her suspicions. She had the proof, the missing piece. Now she needed a plan, a strategy to expose Ilara without putting Donna Hilda at further risk. She thought about who she could trust, who would have the necessary expertise to handle such a delicate situation. A lawyer, perhaps, or a family member who wasn't under Ilara's influence. The path would be arduous, but justice for her mother was the only possible destination. She would not rest until the truth came to light and Ilara paid for her crimes. With the notebook in hand, Clara felt a cold determination take hold of her. She knew the fight would be difficult, but she was no longer alone with her suspicions. She had the proof, the missing piece. Now, she needed a plan, a strategy to expose Ilara without putting Donna Hilda at further risk. She would not rest until the truth came to light and Ilara paid for her crimes. Clara's mind, once a whirlwind of doubts, now focused with precision. She needed help, a voice that carried weight, that knew the law. She remembered Dr. Almeida, a respected lawyer in Ribeirão das Flores, a longtime friend of her father, a man of integrity, few words, but sharp intelligence. Would he be the restorative authority her mother needed? Clara knew that time was crucial. Every minute that passed was another minute her mother spent under Ilara's control. That night, under the pretext of going to the pharmacy, the real one, not the one for sedatives, Clara managed to leave the house unnoticed by Ilara, who was already sleeping in the room next to Donna Hilda's. Her heart pounded, a mix of fear and hope. She drove to Dr. Almeida's house, an old two-story with lights on the porch. He greeted her with a surprised but welcoming look, remembering Zay's daughter, as he affectionately called her father. Clara sat in the living room, Ilara's notebook clutched to her chest, the bank statement and pharmacy receipt in her bag. She took a deep breath and began to tell everything, from her arrival, her mother's condition, Ilara's behavior, the suspicious details, to the discovery of the receipt, the statement, and finally, the macabre diary. Dr. Almeida listened in silence, his eyes once gentle, now serious, scanning the documents Clara handed him. He analyzed the receipt, the statement with the withdrawals, and then, with gloved hands, opened Ilara's notebook. The neighbor's notes, once just scribbles, were now a cold, calculated confession. The dates, the amounts, the sedative doses, the description of Donna Hilda's state after each administration. Hilda calmer, Hilda cooperative, Hilda no questions. Dr. Almeida turned the pages, his face hardening with each line read. "Clara, this is very serious," he said, his voice low but firm. "This is not just embezzlement. It's abuse of an incapacitated person, chemical unlawful imprisonment, bodily harm. It's cruelty beyond measure." The lawyer's words fell upon Clara like a bucket of ice water, but at the same time brought a painful clarity. Her mother was not just ill from age or loneliness. She was being systematically drugged, robbed, and kept in a state of vulnerability so Ilara could take advantage of her. The plausible shock was no longer just the discovery of the notebook, but the legal validation, the confirmation that everything she suspected was, in fact, a crime. The image of her mother, inert in the armchair, gained a new and terrible meaning. Dr. Almeida explained the next steps. "We need to act very cautiously, Clara. If Ilara suspects, she could destroy the evidence or even harm your mother further. The first step is to ensure Donna Hilda's safety and an independent medical examination without Ilara's interference. Then, we will file a formal complaint and a request for interdiction, so you can legally take care of your mother's affairs." He asked for copies of all documents, but insisted that Clara keep the originals in a safe place, away from the house. "This woman is dangerous. Do not underestimate her." Clara felt a weight lift from her shoulders, replaced by a new and powerful responsibility. She was no longer a daughter seeking redemption, but a warrior protecting her mother. Dr. Almeida, with his calm demeanor and knowledge of the law, was the fortress she needed. He didn't promise ease, but he promised justice. And, at that moment, that was all Clara wanted. She knew the battle would be long, but now she had an ally, and the truth in her hands. The game, which once seemed lost, was beginning to turn. She was not alone. If this story touches something you've experienced, subscribe now. Tell me in the comments what you would do in Clara's place. Your likes move these stories, bringing the truth to light. The next day, Dr. Almeida acted. With the documents in hand, he brought the case to justice to protect Donna Hilda. The news, like wildfire, spread through Ribeirão das Flores, and Ilara's fixed smile began to crumble. Ilara, confronted with the incontestable truth of the documents and the notebook, tried to defend herself with the same false sweetness she had used to deceive everyone for so long. But the web that Clara and Dr. Almeida wove was unbreakable. Justice acted quickly. First, Donna Hilda was taken to a hospital where she received the necessary care away from the neighbors' influence. Exams confirmed the presence of sedatives in her system, corroborating every macabre note in the notebook. The legal intervention ensured that Clara, as her daughter, had custody and responsibility for her mother, removing any shadow of Ilara. The neighbor, once so beloved and helpful, was indicted for abuse of an incapacitated person, unlawful imprisonment, and embezzlement. Her smile fell apart, revealing the cold face of greed and cruelty. She found herself alone, isolated by the very community that once admired her, and now looked at her with contempt and repulsion. The loneliness she imposed on Donna Hilda now enveloped her. With Ilara gone, the house in Ribeirão das Flores, once a stage of silence and manipulation, began to breathe again. Slowly, day by day, Donna Hilda returned. The fog in her eyes dissipated, and a glimmer, still faint but real, rekindled her soul. Clara, by her mother's side, felt the guilt dissolve, replaced by a love that rebuilt itself with every smile, every word spoken. The piano, once dusty, once again had its keys caressed by Clara, and the old melodies filled the home, bringing back the life Ilara had stolen. It wasn't easy. The recovery was a long and challenging journey, but the constant presence of her daughter, the affection, the security of knowing she was protected, were the best medicine for Donna Hilda. She was no longer alone, and the house, which seemed untouched but screamed in silence, now resonated with the sound of life and reunion. The story of Donna Hilda and Clara is a powerful reminder. Often, loneliness is not just a condition of the heart, but an open door to human malice for those who take advantage of others' vulnerability. The house seemed untouched, but inside, a dark secret corroded the essence of a life. Clara's keen eye, her persistence in seeking the truth, was what broke the cycle of abuse and brought justice. It is necessary to look beyond the surface, to distrust what seems too perfect, and never underestimate the power of a love that refuses to give up. Poetic justice finally reached Ilara, who tasted her own poison of loneliness and abandonment. And so the old mansion in Ribeirão das Flores, which once held a painful secret, became a refuge of peace, where the smell of wet earth and wild flowers now was an invitation to a new beginning, for the redemption of a daughter and the restoration of a mother. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to the channel now, leave your comment and your like. Tell me where you are watching from so I can recognize you in future videos. perhaps even in a special new feature from our community. Use your hidden truth to share your opinion and help us bring more stories like this. Thank you for staying until the end and supporting our channel.